Hi, my name is Viola and I am 32 now. But this whole story began long before I ever tasted my own independence. Back then, I was young, naive, and living in a quiet suburb of Ohio, a place where life flowed as smoothly as a calm river, and every house seemed like a clone of the next. My family was middle class in the most classic sense: a neatly manicured lawn, sturdy furniture, conversations about taxes and insurance over dinner. My father, Thomas, was a manager at an insurance company, a man for whom order meant more than emotions. My mother, Martha, an accountant with a perpetual look of worry in her eyes, believed the world was divided into debits and credits. And then there was my brother, Alessandro. He is 3 years older than me, and if there were a word for perfection, according to the parental version, it would be his name. Alessandro was their pride, their project, their investment. When he turned 16, my parents handed him the keys to a brand new Ford, shining in the driveway like a prize at the end of a marathon. They paid for his tuition at a private university I could only dream of. Every summer, the three of them would fly off to expensive resorts, returning with tans and photographs where all three were smiling, like from an advertisement for the perfect family. And me? I was working the cash register at Target in a red uniform and a name tag that read, Viola. I was 16, saving every spare coin in a jar labeled college. While they ate lobster on the coast, I spent my summers at Grandma Dorothy's. Her house was in a neighboring state, on the outskirts of an old town that smelled of dust, coffee, and apple pie. Grandma was the only person who saw me not as Alessandro's shadow, but as a soul in my own right. She often said that a woman must be able to stand on her own 2 feet. Don't expect someone to build a life for you, dear. Build it yourself, brick by brick, she would say, and I believed her. When I turned 18, I decided to study web design. The world seemed like a vast canvas where one could create with color, font, and light. I dreamed of freedom, not wealth, but the chance to do something of my own. But at dinner, when I told my parents, their faces darkened. Father frowned as if I'd announced I was going to become a circus acrobat. Web design isn't serious, he said. Study finance. That gives you a future. Mother nodded, adding coldly, You won't earn real money doing that. Alessandro laughed, without looking up from his phone. Yeah, good luck with that, artist. You'll be living under a bridge with your laptop. They refused to pay for my education, not a single dollar, and so I did it myself. I found 2 roommates, rented a cramped apartment with peeling walls and cracked pipes. I enrolled in a community college. I worked 40 hours a week, as a barista during the day, a cashier in the evening. Forever tired, with eyes red from lack of sleep, I kept moving forward. After 2 years, I transferred to a state university, where I spent nights coding and designing layouts. When I turned 22, I got my degree, without anyone's help. I moved to Columbus and got a job at a small digital agency. The work was modest, the salary laughable. But for me, it was a beginning. I rented a room with Eliza, a quiet girl studying to be an architect. We split the rent and leftover pizza, laughed over TV shows, and dreamed of how everything would change one day. I hardly communicated with my parents. A Christmas card, a short message on Thanksgiving, and silence. Only Grandma Dorothy called me on Sundays, asking if I remembered to eat and sleep. One day, I did go home for Christmas. The snow crunched under my feet, the house looked the same, but inside, everything was different. Around the holiday table, the songs of Alessandro's triumphs played again, his brilliant job, his successes, his new car. I listened and felt something breaking inside me, my path, my labor, my sleepless nights. To them, it was a mistake, a failed experiment. After that visit, I never went back. I chose silence and work. At the agency, I worked to exhaustion. I mastered new software, took on extra projects, received client gratitude. My name started getting recognized. I finally felt confidence. But everything fell apart when I turned 27. In the morning, I came to the office and saw a white sheet of paper stuck to the glass door. Agency closed. We are bankrupt. A few lines, and 5 years of my life vanished. No warning, no compensation, no explanations. That same month, Eliza announced she was moving in with her boyfriend. I was left alone in an apartment where every object suddenly became a reminder of the fragility of everything I had built. The rent became unaffordable, and I didn't even have enough money for food. I sent out resumes, went to interviews, smiled until my cheeks ached. But the silence in response grew louder. It was as if the world had turned its back, and I was standing at a crossroads with no signposts. 3 months passed. Time seemed to watch my every step and quietly erase the last outlines of security. My savings were melting away, and the bills forgave no delays. I spent all my savings, those few bills and coins I had collected over the years, like tiles in a mosaic of the future, suddenly scattered. The eviction notice arrived like a cold wedge in the mailbox and made me feel the floor disappearing beneath my feet. I was in despair, the kind that makes your voice hoarse and hides hope behind a thick curtain of distrust. And so, I did what I never wanted to do. I dialed my parents' number. Every ring was like a sigh of a long, unneeded connection. Father answered evenly, almost mechanically. His voice held no search for comforting words. I heard him listening to me, and I uttered the phrases I had been holding inside like a heavy stone. I lost my job. I'm about to be evicted. Can you lend me some money? $2,000 just for a month. I'll pay it back as soon as I can. A pause followed, from which judgment grew. Father snapped that it was the consequence of my wrong career choice. And with his words, I felt that familiar, oppressive family habit of judging by measures of usefulness. I begged, pleaded, asked for any amount, but the answer was harsh. We can't help you. We're spending money on Alessandro's MBA program. You chose your own path, so walk it. Mother merely reinforced it. Her voice was cold and brief. We don't have the money to save you from the consequences of your decisions. The receiver slammed down, and in the silence of my apartment, the echo of their words hummed for a long time. I had little choice. I packed a few things, some clothes, my laptop, those tiny trinkets that held the warmth of memories. Everything fit into the car, and I got behind the wheel, a severed hope. On a rainy October evening, the road to my parents' house felt like a short ritual of humiliation. Puddles splashed, reflecting streetlights, and I was soaked to the bone as I walked to the door. Father opened it, and seeing me in wet clothes didn't tear his closed expression with a smile. I asked to stay for a few weeks until I found a job. The answer was cold. No, you need to take responsibility for your own choices. Mother appeared in the doorway and, backing up my father's words, repeated, "We have a homeowners association meeting tomorrow. Now is not a good time." Their voices were firm and final. The door slammed shut like a falling curtain. Standing in the rain, I felt both an icy fear and a strange, old firmness inside me. The very one Grandma Dorothy had instilled in me long ago. Grandma wasn't answering her phone. 3 unsuccessful calls and silence. In the morning, I returned to the car and drove to a Walmart parking lot. Nights in the car became my new lodgings. The seat smelled of other people's time, and the trunk lid became my roof. During the day, I showered at Planet Fitness, using a day pass to maintain some semblance of decency. Then I went to cafes and restaurants, filled out applications, handed out resumes, and caught incoming opportunities like someone catching rare winds of change. Life narrowed to a cycle of searching and washing away fatigue. One day, while working on my laptop at Starbucks, I heard a familiar name, Carla, a school friend who always knew how to look you in the eye and see so much it was surprising. She approached and asked if everything was okay. Her voice held no judgment, just interest and cautious kindness. I couldn't hold back and burst into tears. Years of tension, deprivation, loneliness, all those losses suddenly spilled out. Carla sat beside me, listened, and her words were like warm hands. "Come stay with me, I have a spare room." She took me into her home. For the first time in weeks, I tasted hot food, slept in a bed, feeling the firmness of care in the pillow. She let me take a real shower, dry my face with a towel that smelled of cleanliness, and fall asleep without the fear of waking up to uncertainty. The next morning, Carla made a few calls. Her boyfriend David owned a design studio and was willing to look at my portfolio. That same day, I was invited to his office. I brought my layouts, screenshots, and drafts, and he reviewed them carefully, as if piecing together a mosaic of my efforts. He gave me a job. "You start on Monday," he said calmly. The pay wasn't great, but it was a foothold. Not an emptiness, but a chance to stand on my own feet again. On Monday, I stepped over the threshold of the studio and saw a small but bright space. Large windows let in daylight. White walls reflected it, and in this neat minimalism, every project seemed to be on stage. David had 3 other designers working for him. "You'll start with the basics," David said, leaning easily against the desk where layouts, logo sketches, and font samples were spread out. His voice was calm, but the confidence in it was palpable, like a steady pulse in the veins of a working mechanism. Client presentations, social media visuals, simple branding elements, and once you get comfortable, you'll get more serious projects. I nodded, feeling that forgotten sensation I had long been searching for, a sense of purpose, coming alive inside me. The salary was small, but enough to buy food, put gas in the car, and contribute to Carla's house. After months of fear and uncertainty, even these simple things felt like luxuries. I worked hard, more than required, stayed late, took on extra assignments, organized other people's files, corrected layouts, monitored colors, fonts, and spatial balance. I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of more, that I could earn my place in the light, not hide in the shadow of others' decisions. After everything I'd been through, this job became not just a means of survival, but a thread to pull myself out of the darkness. David noticed. After 2 weeks, he called me into his office, bright, almost sterile, smelling of fresh coffee and paper. "You're doing well," he said, looking straight into my eyes. "Very well. I'm giving you a raise and more responsibility." The world around seemed to grow quieter. I nodded, trying to hold back tears of relief, but they escaped anyway. Not from sorrow, but from gratitude that someone had finally seen my work. That same week, a call came that changed everything. A woman's voice on the other end introduced herself. "This is Margaret. I'm your grandmother Dorothy's neighbor." My heart stopped. "Viola? I'm calling about your grandmother. She's in the hospital. She has pneumonia, very serious. She was asking for you." The world seemed to plunge into a hum. I sat down, trying to speak, but my fingers trembled so much the phone slipped from my hands. That's why Grandma hadn't answered when I called her that night, standing in the driveway in the rain. I told Carla immediately. "I need to go to her, right now." Carla didn't even ask why. She just said, "I'll drive you." We left early in the morning. The drive took 3 hours. The wet asphalt gleamed, cars flew past, and I kept thinking if I would make it in time. When we entered the room, Grandma seemed tiny, as if the illness had squeezed all the warmth out of her in those days. Her face was pale, her skin thin like parchment. Machines beeped steadily, the lamplight reflected off metal stands. But when she saw me, her eyes lit up with their old light. "Viola, my dear," she whispered. I approached, took her hand, warm and weak, and said, "I'm here, Grandma. I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner." She tried to smile. "I tried to call you back, but I got sick too quickly." I shook my head. "Don't think about that. The important thing is I'm here." Carla returned to Columbus the next day, and I stayed. I took time off. David didn't hesitate, just said, "Family comes first." I spent every morning and evening with Grandma. We talked about the past. She told me what my father was like in his youth. Kind, dreamy, nothing like the man I knew. She talked about my grandfather, whom I never met, how they built the house together, how he loved to laugh at her pies. And then, with special warmth, she said she was proud of me for not breaking. On the third day, when the light in the room grew soft and golden, Grandma asked me to open the bedside drawer. "Take the envelope, Viola," she said. I obeyed. Inside were keys and papers. "It's for my cottage," she said quietly. "Here are the title documents and the details for my savings account. It's all yours." I froze. "Grandma, no, don't talk like that. You'll get better." She smiled weakly. "We both know that's not true. I want you to have a real home. Build the life you deserve in it." I cried, burying my face in her palm. "I love you." "And I love you, dear, more than you can imagine." She passed away that night, quietly, peacefully, as if she had simply fallen asleep while I held her hand. The world became different still, as if the air had frozen between inhale and exhale. The funeral was 2 days later. My parents came. Alessandro, too. They sat in the front row as if at a boring ceremony, irritation in every movement. I looked at them and felt a strange detachment, as if not only time but an entire sea lay between us. After the funeral, Grandma's lawyer gathered us in a small conference room to read the will. He opened the documents, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. His voice was even. "To my granddaughter Viola, I leave my cottage, all its furnishings, and the savings account, which holds approximately $48,000. A silence fell in the room, thick and tense, like before a storm. Father was the first to jump up. His face turned crimson, his voice shaking with anger. "This is unacceptable. That property should go to us, not her." Mother chimed in. "Dorothy was my mother. The house should be mine by right." The lawyer, without looking up, said calmly, "The will is legally binding." Father pointed at me as if at a criminal. "She manipulated the old woman, turned her against us." I exhaled. "I just visited her. That's all I did. You didn't even come." Alessandro stood up, calm but with contempt in his voice. "This isn't fair. We need that money more than you do." "The will stands," the lawyer said firmly. "This meeting is over." My parents and brother left, slamming the door as if that could cancel the decision. And I remained sitting, clutching the keys, not just to a house, but possibly to a new life. I moved into Grandma's cottage 2 weeks after the will was read. The house greeted me with the smell of old wood and a slight sadness, as if Dorothy's footsteps still echoed in its walls. It was worn, with peeling paint on the windowsills and rusty door handles, but it was my space, my first real home. I stood in the middle of the living room, among boxes and dust, and felt it. A new chapter was beginning, not under anyone else's name, but under my own. There was a lot of work. I didn't waste a day. I took a brush, paint, and turned every room into a reflection of the colors Grandma loved. Soft lavender in the bedroom, warm cream in the kitchen, blue in the living room like a piece of summer sky. I hired professionals to replace the wiring and fix the pipes, sanded the old parquet myself, restoring its shine. In the backyard, where weeds had long overtaken the old flower beds, I planted peonies and daisies, Grandma's favorites. It was all hard work, but every movement felt connected to her, as if her kind hands were still guiding mine. David allowed me to work remotely. It was a salvation for me. I set up a workspace in the former guest room, placed a desk by the window where the morning sun spilled honey-colored light on the walls, and continued working on the studio's projects. But in parallel, I started taking orders from my own first independent clients. During the day, I designed logos for David, and in the evenings, I built websites for local entrepreneurs. It was my chance to grow, step by step. One day, I went into a local bookstore, a cozy place that smelled of coffee, paper, and a little dust. There, I met Ryan Anderson, the owner. We got to talking about design, about how a visual identity can bring a space to life, breathe character into a business. A few days later, he hired me to rebrand his store. I put my soul into the project, created a logo, a sign, a website, helped with the interior. After the renovated store opened, word spread quickly through the area. New clients started coming to me as if the doors of opportunity had finally swung wide open. A year after moving into the cottage, I officially registered my own design studio, Horizon Creative. I love the name itself. The horizon isn't a boundary, it's a promise. I specialized in branding for small businesses, helping people translate their dreams into visual form, and with their stories, my own grew. I worked almost without rest, but this fatigue was joyful. It wasn't an exhausting race, but a path where every little thing had meaning. 5 years flew by like one long breath. The cottage was transformed. Every corner was thought out. Every detail bore my touch. I turned Grandma's old garage into a professional office space, bright, with shelves for books and boards for ideas. Horizon Creative grew. I hired 3 employees, and we had regular clients, a stable income, a reputation. Over those years, Ryan became more than just a client to me. Our conversations about fonts and composition gradually turned into evening walks, dinners on the porch, talks about life. From friendship grew a feeling, deep, calm, real. We dated for almost a year. For the first time, I felt that life had finally fallen into place. A home, a business, someone by my side. It all seemed so natural, as if I had been walking towards it all my life. And then one day, during a routine morning as I drank coffee by the window, my phone beeped. A message. The name on the screen, Alessandro. I hadn't seen him in 5 years, hadn't heard from him, didn't remember him without a heaviness. Hi, Viola. Heard you're doing great. Would like to reconnect. We're family. Can we talk? I looked at the screen for a long time. I didn't trust it, but curiosity, as always, whispered louder than caution. I called back. Alessandro, what do you want? I asked dryly. Just to talk, he replied in a tone too friendly to be sincere. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about family, about how important it is to stick together. I'd like to visit you, see where you live. Something in his voice put me on guard, but I agreed. One visit, just for a couple of hours to understand what he was after. Okay, Saturday afternoon, and only for a few hours. Great, he said. I'll bring Mom and Dad. Before I could object, the call ended. The next day, my mother called. Her voice was artificially sweet. Viola, dear, Alessandro said we're coming to visit you. I'm so excited to see what you've done with Grandma's cottage. It's my cottage now, I replied calmly. Of course. I just meant how wonderful it is that you renovated it. Family is so important, isn't it? See you on Saturday, I said and hung up. When Saturday arrived, the air was warm, clear. I cleaned thoroughly, not for them, for myself. My parents and Alessandro arrived in the afternoon. They slowly walked through the house, appraising every corner as if estimating its price. Mother smiled smoothly, father nodded grimly. Alessandro walked behind with that self-satisfied expression I remembered from childhood. We sat down to eat in the dining room. I had made sandwiches and salad, simple and sufficient. The conversation flowed politely but coldly, like water under ice. After about 20 minutes, Father finally got to the point. Viola, he said, this house is too big for one person. Don't you think it's wasteful? I like having space, I replied. Mother picked up his line, looking at me with her impeccable smile. What your father means? We were thinking we could move in with you. I froze, putting down my sandwich. What? We're family, Alessandro interjected, and all this space is yours anyway. Aren't you being stingy? No, I replied firmly. Just hear us out, Father said. Alessandro could take your office in the garage, run his business from there. Your mother and I, the master bedroom, and you could use one of the small rooms. Are you insane? I exhaled, feeling a wave of anger rising in my chest. This is my house. Mom looked at me with that strained expression she always used to cover irritation with a guise of concern. We're family, she said softly, but her tone held a cold threat. Family should help each other, like you helped me when I was living in my car? My voice grew louder. I was almost shouting. When I begged for help and you just hung up? When I called, asking for just $2,000 so I wouldn't end up on the street? Father pressed his lips together, his face flushing. That was different, he hissed. How? I stepped towards him. Explain. How exactly was it different? We had our reasons, Mother said, looking away. I stood up from the table. The air between us grew thick, like smoke. Get out of my house, now! You're making a huge mistake, Father said, his voice trembling with anger. Leave, I replied firmly, without raising my voice. Alessandro also stood up, his smile almost predatory. You'll regret this, little sister. I doubt it, I said. They left, slamming the door, but from the look on my father's face, I knew this wasn't the end. He never knew how to lose. 3 weeks later, Ryan and I were preparing for a conference in Chicago, a 3-day event on design, branding, and digital marketing. We'd been looking forward to it for months. It was a chance to breathe something new into the studio, meet colleagues, get inspired. We checked into a hotel with a river view, attended the first day of lectures, walked around the city in the evening, laughed, talked about the future. Everything was perfect. On the second day, around noon, my phone vibrated. A message from Margaret, Grandma's former neighbor. Viola, there's someone at your house. I saw them carrying things in. Just wanted to let you know. My heart sank. My fingers opened the Ring app on their own. The camera feed appeared on the screen, and everything inside me froze. On the recording, my father was at the back door, tools in his hands. He was bending over, fiddling with the lock. A minute later, the door gave way. The camera in the living room showed my mother and Alessandro carrying in boxes, suitcases, some bags. They were laughing. The world narrowed to that small screen. I dialed Alessandro's number. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. What the hell are you doing? I screamed when he answered. We're moving in, he said calmly. It's a family house. We have a right to be here. You broke my lock, I shouted. We didn't break in, he retorted with that fake softness he always used when lying. We're family, and if you try to evict us, we'll contest Grandma's will. Prove she was of unsound mind when she wrote it. You're lying, I whispered. Try us, he said, and hung up. The last words rang in my ears. We're just taking what rightfully belongs to us. I looked at Ryan. His face darkened. We need to go back. Now, I said. We packed in silence, checked out of the hotel, and headed home. The drive took 4 long hours. I barely breathed, clutching my phone, replaying the breaking and entering footage over and over. Everything inside was churning. Rage, fear, disgust. Ryan held the wheel tightly, his gaze straight and focused. Neither of us said a word. When we turned onto the familiar road and saw the cottage, a chill ran down my spine. 2 cars were in the driveway, my parents' and Alessandro's. It was all real. My home, my sanctuary, my labor, taken over. I opened the door, and my heart clenched. The house was unrecognizable. My furniture was moved, pictures taken off the walls, replaced with family photos. My parents at a picnic, Alessandro at graduation. In the bedroom, my father's clothes hung next to mine, and in the bathroom, I saw my mother's brush and perfume bottle. Everything looked as if I had never been there. What are you doing here? My father asked, coming out of the kitchen. He spoke matter-of-factly, as if he'd caught me in the office without permission. You weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow. Get out of my house, I said evenly. No, he replied, crossing his arms. You don't even have a real family. No husband, no children. You're alone. We're reclaiming this house. We need it more than you do. This is my house, I said. Grandma left it to me. We'll see about that, he shot back. Mom appeared in the doorway, hands on her hips. We're not going anywhere, Viola. Get used to it. I took out my phone. Fine, I said. Then I'm calling the police. Go ahead, my father sneered. We'll tell them we're family and you invited us yourself. I have a recording, I replied. The cameras caught you breaking the lock. It's breaking and entering, unlawful entry. My father's face paled. Mother lowered her eyes, and Alessandro froze, as if he hadn't expected me to have evidence. I pressed 911. The operator's voice was calm, businesslike. 911, what's your emergency? This is Viola Slater, I said, trying to speak steadily. I need to report a break-in. My family has broken into my home and refuses to leave. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Blue and red lights flashed in the driveway, reflecting in the wet windows of my cottage. 2 officers, a man and a woman, got out of the car and walked to the door with the confident, unhurried gait of people accustomed to chaos. I met them on the doorstep, holding my phone with trembling hands. On the screen was the camera footage, indisputable proof of my father breaking the lock, my mother and Alessandro entering behind him, carrying boxes and suitcases. It all looked clear, cold, documented. Every movement captured by a lens devoid of emotion. The officers exchanged glances, then one of them, tall, graying, with a tired but not unkind face, turned to my parents. "You have 30 minutes to gather your belongings and leave the premises. If you are still here after that time, we will have to arrest you for unlawful entry." Mom covered her face with her hands and started crying, as if this scene were unexpected, as if she'd been caught off guard. "We have nowhere to go," she whispered. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, felt no pity. "That's not my problem," I replied. They rushed to pack their things in silence, only the sound of suitcases thudding and drawers slamming shut disturbing the air. Alessandro gathered his boxes with a kind of bitter determination, as if wanting to vent his powerlessness on them. Mom kept sniffling. Father didn't say a word, just flushed and clenched his teeth. 20 minutes later, they were outside. The police escorted them to their cars, and I stood on the porch, motionless, watching the 3 people closest to me drive away, slowly, without looking back, dissolving into the twilight. After they left, the officers helped me file an official report. I gave them copies of the surveillance footage and wrote a statement. One of them said that, based on the video, I could get a temporary restraining order prohibiting them from approaching me and the house. I did that the next day. For the first time in a long while, I felt not just protected. I felt I had finally set a boundary that couldn't be crossed. The investigation began almost immediately. The detective assigned to the case contacted me a few days later. He was a collected, quiet man in his 40s, with attentive eyes that seemed to see everything. He informed me that during a search of my parents' and Alessandro's phones, they had found a group chat on WhatsApp titled Family Plan. It contained about 100 messages. The detective showed me a printout. I read it, not believing my eyes. They discussed everything: how and when to enter, which rooms they would take, what to say if I tried to stop them. In one message, my father wrote, "She's alone and weak. She'll give in sooner or later." In another, Alessandro added, "If she resists, we'll threaten legal action. She'll be scared." And my mother wrote, "We deserve this house more than she does." Every line cut like a knife over old scars. This wasn't a momentary madness. It was a plan, cynical, cold-blooded, premeditated. A few weeks later, the district attorney filed formal charges against my father and Alessandro, breaking and entering unlawful entry. No charges were filed against my mother. The video showed the door was already broken open when she entered. Everything happened quickly. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. I attended the hearing, sat in the front row while my father and brother stood before the judge, tired, aged, but still just as confident in their own rightness. When the judge read the charges, my father and Alessandro quickly agreed to a plea deal, pleaded guilty in exchange for probation. There was no jail time, but they were given a year of probation and ordered to pay a fine. The judge also extended my restraining order for 2 years. They were prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me and my property or contacting me in any way. When the hearing ended, I walked out of the courthouse with a feeling as if a heavy weight in my chest had been replaced by emptiness. Not joy, just a quiet, spent relief. It was over. I could finally breathe. Ryan was waiting for me at the entrance, holding a coffee. He didn't say anything, just took my hand. A week after the trial, there was an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately, the angular, neat letters of my mother. I almost threw the letter away unread, but some feeling, maybe remnants of an old daughterly attachment, stopped me. I opened the envelope. The letter was long, several pages. Mom had written it by hand without her usual ornate phrases. "Viola," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I must tell you the truth." She wrote about the years when I was like a ghost to them, how they were blinded by their own ideas of success. She admitted that my father always considered love for children something superfluous, a sign of weakness, and that she just followed him, afraid of losing stability. She told me that after the house incident, everything collapsed. My father was fired from the insurance company. It turned out he had committed serious violations. Alessandro lost all his savings investing in cryptocurrency, then sold his car to pay off debts. They lost their house and were now living in a small rental apartment in Cincinnati. "I understand why you don't want to see us," she wrote. "I wouldn't forgive it either. But I want you to know, I finally see how wrong we were. We pushed away the one who loved us the most." The last lines were uneven, as if written with a trembling hand. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know. I understand. I hope you have a happy life, Viola. You've earned it." I reread the letter 3 times, slowly, as if each line held a different, not immediately accessible meaning, as if my mother's handwriting was trying to convey not just words, but the breath of regret, too late to change anything. Then I sat by the window for a long time, listening to the wind rustle the leaves of the old oak tree, and felt the storm inside me gradually quieting. When I finally picked up a pen and wrote a reply, it wasn't out of pity or anger, just out of the need to put a final period. A few short, restrained sentences. "I accept your apology. I appreciate that you understand, but I am not ready to let you back into my life. I may never be ready. I need to move on. Without you. I hope you understand that." I dropped the letter in the mailbox and, walking away, didn't look back. There was no reply, and it didn't hurt me. The emptiness that once frightened me now felt like a space where I could breathe. Life settled into a familiar, even flow, but this flow was different. Confident, clear, as if someone inside had finally turned the right key. My business grew, gaining weight and reputation. Horizon Creative was known around town. We took on more serious projects, hired talented people, and in the office where I once worked alone, voices, laughter, and the rustle of paper now filled the air. Ryan became my anchor, kind, calm, always attentive. He didn't try to fix me, didn't force me to pretend to be stronger than I was. He was just there, patient, clear, real. Everything my family had never been. Almost a year had passed since the house incident. On a warm evening when the garden was filled with the scent of jasmine and the air grew thick with the chirping of crickets, Ryan and I had dinner under the big oak tree, the same one under which I used to sit with Grandma Dorothy. Candles burned on the table. It was slowly getting dark, and the sunset enveloped everything in a soft golden light. Ryan stood up from the table, walked around it, knelt on one knee, and took a small box from his pocket. His voice was firm and quiet when he said, "Viola, you are the strongest person I've ever known, the kindest, the most real. Will you marry me?" I couldn't answer right away. My throat tightened, and only tears revealed how much I had been waiting for this moment. "Yes," I finally said, and he smiled as if the whole world had become lighter. 6 months later, we got married. It was a modest ceremony, in the garden, among friends, surrounded by the flowers Grandma had once planted. No relatives, no pomp, just wind chimes, laughter, and a feeling of purity. Everything was as I had dreamed happiness would be. Quiet, without ostentatious glitter, but filled with meaning. Sometimes news about my family came through mutual acquaintances. They said my father had started drinking heavily, that the house they used to live in had long been sold, and conversations between my parents had turned into empty formalities. Alessandro moved to Florida, got a job as a salesman, and tried to start over, as if the past could be erased by changing addresses. My mother filed for divorce, renting a small apartment where she lived alone for the first time in many years. I listened to this news with indifference, devoid of malice, just an awareness that everything has consequences and no one escapes them. My life, meanwhile, grew fuller. Horizon Creative thrived, and I no longer doubted my own strength. Ryan and I turned the cottage into a real home, cozy, bright, smelling of coffee in the mornings and fresh flowers on the windowsill. And then came the news that changed everything. I was pregnant, 3 months along, and a subtle change was already felt in my body and soul, as if a new breath of the world was waking within me. Sometimes, touching my stomach with my palm, I remembered Grandma Dorothy, her voice, the confidence with which she once said, "You'll manage, Viola. Just believe in yourself." I often thought that if she could see me now, with a home, a husband, a future child, she would smile with that bright gaze that always held a little more understanding than words. She gave me not just a house, but a chance to build my own destiny, and I used that chance to the fullest. One Sunday, as the sun lay softly on the earth, I was working in the garden. Ryan was inside making lunch, and I was planting new flowers in the very flower beds where Grandma's asters once bloomed. Suddenly, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something, perhaps intuition, stopped me. I swiped the screen and a voice came through that made my heart clench. "Viola, it's me," my mother said. Her voice was quiet, hoarse, as if tired from years of repentance. "The restraining order expired last month. I'm not calling to ask for a meeting. Just wanted to say I'm happy for you. I heard you got married, that you're expecting a child." I was silent, unable to find words. "I'm not asking to be part of your life," she continued. "I know I haven't earned that. I just wanted you to know I'm proud of you. You created something beautiful out of nothing. You will be a wonderful mother." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a lump in my throat that made it hard to breathe. "That's all I wanted to say. Take care of yourself, Viola," she said and hung up. I stood in the garden, holding the phone, listening to the silence that seemed to hold her voice. In my chest was a strange, deep feeling, not pain, not regret, but a quiet sadness for what might have been if things had been different. But over that sadness rose another, gratitude, for the life I was living now, for the person who loved me unconditionally, for the child who would soon be born, and for Grandma Dorothy, thanks to whom all this became possible. I put away the phone, wiped my hands on the soil, and returned to the flowers. The wind stirred the oak leaves, and I thought I heard it whispering something kind. This was my life now, my home, my family, my future. Everything I had gone through pain and loneliness for, everything I truly deserved, and I was happy.